Hello everybody, and welcome to the Video Game Chronicles. Now, the last video that I did, I tested out Holy Diver on the two most popular NES emulators. And I also talked about why Holy Diver does not work perfectly on every single NES emulator. And to show you proof that not every single NES or Famicom ROM work on these NES emulators properly. However, I only tested out the two most popular NES emulators in that video. But there's still more NES emulators that I have to show you that I've also tested. Yeah, because what I'm going to do in this video, I am going to put to the test all of the NES emulators that I could find on the internet, and I'm also going to be testing out the NES Classic Edition, and I'm putting that in the competition. And that way you can play Holy Diver on an emulator that is right for you. So I'm going to test all of these out today in this video, and I'm going to let you all know the best NES emulator to play Holy Diver on. So let the competition begin. This, of course, is the emulators that I'm going to test out. And the only one I'm not going to test out is RetroArch, because RetroArch uses software from some of these emulators that are on this list. So I'm not going to do RetroArch for this. And of course, as so you know, I tried Nestopia and FCEUX. But I'm going to try them again just to show you how their performance is. The other ones I'm going to try after that, of course, are Mesen, Jnes, Virtual NES, BlizzHawk, Nintendolator, Rock NES, Higan, and finally an emulator. And you're going to find out which is the best. I'm going to get started right now. And these are the 4 NES ROMs I'm going to test. And these could make or break an emulator. And of course I mentioned Holy Diver. Now 2 of these are patched, most noticeably this one and this one, 1 and 3. And I had these patched because I wanted to try them. And this of course is non-translated, and this one is translated. And both of those use the MMC1 hack patch. While the other 2, Holy Diver Japan and Holy Diver TR, they are non-patched, and they use the 78 mapper, which was installed for that particular game. And that was done by IRAM. And I'm going to test all 4 of these out. And I'm going to start with the non-patched versions, and then I'm going to do the patched ones. So that way you'll know if they work or not. So I'm going to get right to it. The first one I'm going to test is the FCEUX. And as you can see, it's glitched right there. That's not supposed to happen. Now I'm going to try the translated version of Holy Diver. And as you can see, the same thing with the translated version. And as you can see, the MMC1 hack patch for the non-translated version also doesn't work. And as you can see, graphical glitches again, which means none of the ROMs work perfectly on FCEUX. Now I'm going to try Nestopia. And as you can see, the non-patched Japanese version of the Holy Diver works perfectly. Now when it comes to the non-patched translated version, this is what happens. Look at that. It's really glitched and virtually unplayable. Look at that. You can play it, but it's too glitched. And as you can see, both the non-patch and patch versions of the Famicom original work. So it's 2 for 3 for Nestopia. Alright. This is the patch translated version. And as you can see, it's not glitched at the beginning of the game, which is good, but I'm not done with the test yet. There's still another. And now for the ultimate test. This is the last test. See if it works perfectly. And as you can see, the patch translated version works perfectly. A huge improvement over the non-patched version. Nestopia, as you saw right there, did a almost perfect job. The only one that didn't work properly was the non-patch translated version. All the rest worked perfectly. Now I'm going to try the NES Classic Edition. So I'm going to test out the non-patched Famicom ROM, which of course is right here. Now what I did, of course, I hacked my Wii for this test. And I put in different descriptions for the NES Classic Edition instead of having the descriptions for like how it was on the computer. So this of course is the MMC1 hack. This is the patched Famicom ROM of Holy Diver instead of it being called Famicom. And of course I just called the non-patched Famicom ROM Famicom. And the patch translated version, this was the only thing that wasn't changed. This of course has the MMC1 hack patch as well. And finally, this is the non-patched translated version. I put translated version right there. So now I'm going to test out the non-patched Famicom ROM. And it says this dispense point is not usable. Please delete the dispense point from the dispense point list. So that clearly means that the non-patched Famicom ROM does not work on the NES Classic Edition. So now we're going to try the non-patched translated version. Same problem. Same problem. So that means none of the non-patched ROMs, either Famicom or translated version otherwise, does not work on the NES Classic Edition. So the only ones we can try is the MMC1 hack, and that is the Famicom ROM, of course, which of course uses the patch. And this is, of course, is the patch translated version, which we're also going to try. See if this works. And it does. Alright, I'm going to test this out, see if there's no glitches or whatsoever, or anything like that. And there's nothing so far, so now I'm going to check to see if there's any glitches after I defeat the first boss. Alright, moment of truth. Let's see if at least we can get 1 out of 3. And we do. Look at that. Even though there's a little... This is a little bit different from what you see in other tests I've done. But it definitely works perfectly. So now I'm going to try the patch translated version, see if that works. And so far so good. No glitches whatsoever. Well, there wouldn't be. Entire screen. And no glitches whatsoever here so far. But I gotta find out if there's any glitches after defeating the first boss. Alright. Time to see if this works, and will the NES Classic Edition be 2 for 4? And yes, it is working, even though it does have that slight problem that others did not have. It definitely works. So that's 2 for 4 for the NES Classic Edition. The NES Classic Edition surprised me big time. And I did not expect the non-patched Famicom and translated ROMs of Holy Diver to not work. They were not supported on the NES Classic Edition. But when it came to the patched ROMs for Holy Diver, they worked perfectly without any problems. So it's definitely better than the FCEUX, but I don't think it is as good as Nestopia. Now I'm going to try Rock NES. And as you can see, the non-patched, non-translated ROM of Holy Diver is glitched. So 0 for 1 for Rock NES. Now there's one thing I did notice, and surprisingly enough it gives it away. You see on the bottom right there, you can definitely tell that the non-patched translated version of this game is glitched. Nothing more that I have to say. 0 for 2. And as you can see, Rock NES is 0 for 3. It's in line with the FCEUX. And that's the patched, non-translated version. And as you can see, same problem as the non-patched translated version. And I've actually noticed that with the other versions as well, the other ROMs. So it looks like 0 for 4, and this is Rock NES is pretty much the same as the FCEUX. None of the ROMs work properly. Alright, so the Rock NES wasn't as stellar, and it had the same problem as the FCEUX. And another problem, I should say, is that you cannot actually have recordings that you could play back unless you actually go to the emulator itself. So as a result, unlike the FCEUX, which allows for recording at AVI, Rock NES doesn't. So that's another strike against Rock NES. And unfortunately it's in line with the FCEUX, but slightly worse. Now I'm going to try Jnes. Alright, I'm going to try the Jnes Emulator, and of course this is how it is set up, where you pick which ROM that you want. And of course I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with the non-patched Japanese version, and I'm pressing the button. You hear me press the button. So I'm going to see why it's not working. Alright, let me check. Is there any indicator? Oh, wait a minute. I see it, but the camera does not see it. Look at that. Look what it says right there on the bottom. Error. 78 is not supported. Can you see that? Look at that. So that means I can't play the non-patched Japanese version. Alright, so I'm going to try the translated version. See if that works. You gotta be kidding me. So this has the same problem as the NES Classic Edition, where I can't play that either. I know that the NES Classic Edition had the problem of the non-patched versions of both the Famicom and translated ROMs. Of course, those did not work on the NES Classic Edition, and look at that. It says error mapper 78 unsupported. So that means it has the same problem as the NES Classic Edition. So that means I'm down to only 2 options, which means I can only play one of these or both. So I'm going to try this one. But now it plays. Does it have recording? That's the question. Can I record? Okay, there is movie capture. I will try that out after I test this sucker. Okay, this is the... move that up here. Alright, let's see if it works properly. Well, this part works properly. Alright, so now you know that works properly. Now I'm going to see if there's no glitches at the end of the first boss. See if that actually works. And I'm going to test out, see if this actually has recordings that I could keep and stuff. So that way I can show you at the end. See for yourself. Alright. And as you can see, it has the same glitches that you'd find if you played on the FCEUX. Alright, now I'm going to try the patch translated version. The power's on properly. Hope it doesn't have the same glitches. Oh, so far so good. But how is it after I beat the first boss? Alright, last one. And it looks like this is much worse than the NES Classic Edition. So far this is the worst emulator in terms of performance. The Jnes is so far the worst in terms of performance. It did not support any of the versions of Holy Diver, neither the translated or the Japanese version, and the only ones that were supported were the ones that were patched. Except the problem is it was still glitched, like if you were playing the FCEUX emulator. So far, the Jnes I recommend that you avoid, because if it's not going to perform well and not going to play every single ROM of Holy Diver, then what's the point? I really recommend more the NES Classic Edition over the Jnes. Next up is the Higan. Alright, now it's time to try the non-patched Japanese ROM of Holy Diver. Let's reset. Let's see what that does. Nothing. So far, nothing. So far, it's just a blank screen. And I'm trying to figure out why. Power cycle? What's that? So far, nothing. Alright. So if that doesn't work, we're going to try the translated version. Okay, let's reset. Nothing. Power cycle. Nothing. Alright, let's try the patched Famicom. Well, now we're getting something. So that means it's just like the Jnes and it doesn't work properly. And it looks kind of slow so far. But let's see how it works. Okay, so far no glitches, but it's really slow. Good sign is it doesn't look like it's glitched, so I'm going to see how it looks when I beat the boss. Unfortunately, there was no record for the video, so I have to record it this way. And look at that. It actually works perfectly without any problems whatsoever. That is a good sign. Even though it is kind of slow, unfortunately. I just wish it was a little faster. But that's a good sign. Now I just gotta check the patch translated version, see if it does the same thing. Alright, now it's time for the patch translated version. Because the non-patch didn't work. Is it glitched? No, it's not. At least this part. Well, I gotta see what it looks like when I beat the first boss then. Alright, moment of truth. Will this work? And it does! It does! It's definitely better than the Jnes, I'll tell you that. Even though it is slow, it at least works perfectly without any glitches whatsoever. At least those two patched versions. That is at least a good sign. At least it performs just like the NES Classic Edition. But I will say the NES Classic Edition has a heads up over Higan, I think it was pronounced. Higan is definitely a vast improvement over the Jnes Emulator. But it's definitely not an improvement over the NES Classic Edition, because the NES Classic Edition performed much better than the Higan did. It wasn't as slow, and it performed like any NES and Famicom game should be. However, I will say that the Higan did much better than the Jnes Emulator, in which it played the patched Famicom and translated ROMs of Holy Diver perfectly. So Higan is definitely one of the better emulators to try out. Next up is the Mesen. The one thing I do like about the Mesen, look at that. It shows you every single game that you've played. And of course, if you haven't played a game, it will show up after you've played the game. And I already clicked on all of these, but first I'm going to try the Japan ROM, of course, and I'm going to play that. Oh, and there's a unique control at the bottom right there, which is kind of cool. It tells you if you're pressing the buttons or not. That's a pretty cool feature. Right now, I just want to check to see if this looks good. And look at that, it does. That's so far, but I got to check after I beat the first boss. See how that looks. Alright, now I'm going to see how well does it when I get this item. Let's look. And look at that. It works perfectly without any problems. The only reason why it's slow like that is because I have this on record. But it works. Alright, now we're going to see if there's any problems with the translated version. And it looks like the same. Has the same problem as Nestopia. Yeah, really glitched, and the game is almost practically unplayable. Alright, so now it's time to try the patched Famicom ROM. See if that works perfectly. And it does, at least this part. But now I'm going to see if, after the first boss, to see, once I get the item, to see if that doesn't have any glitches. Alright, now I'm going to get the item and see what happens. And look at that. Both the non and patched Famicom ROMs work perfectly. Now I'm going to try the patched translated ROM. See if that works better than the non-patched. And it definitely looks good. Alright, now I'm going to see how it looks when I beat the first boss. Alright, moment of truth. Let's see if it works. And yes, it does. The patched translated ROM of Holy Diver works better than the non-patched ROM of Holy Diver. So, in line with Nestopia, Mazin, no question about it, one of the best NES emulators on the internet, along with Nestopia. It definitely works. It works perfectly with the 3 out of the 4 Holy Diver ROMs that I tested, with the exception of the non-patched translated ROM, and that's just because the translated ROM of Holy Diver had the same problem just like with Nestopia. However, once you patch the translated ROM, you should be able to play Holy Diver no matter which way you want. So Mesen, I actually highly recommend you check out for yourself.